Check 1, 2.
All right, and I'll hand it over to you.
Yeah. Did you bring a fire?
I brought the fire. We were ready to go.
Fire. I was checking the mempool this morning, and it appears to be on fire right now. And my first thought was like, okay, so if we're all here, who is using Bitcoin right now?
Who are the ones inscribing?
Yeah.
Who's actually inscribing?
Someone
right
have their
now? Somebody has
laptop
a
open and like blasting the mempool and stuff, because this is wild. It's like 120 something for VByte
right now. Yeah, that's the clearing rate, which is great for miners. Which is that's where I come from, and I guess you come from now, and even before now you were a miner. So these are all good things.
When Ragnar approached me to come to do this conference in Miami, I did not currently work for Nick, so now you have. Now Nick has hired me and Cypher as the crack Ordinals team, and so we're kind of representing Luxor up here right now.
Yeah. So we're representing Luxor, but Luxor has a lot of brands. We have Hashrate Index, which tracks all of this, all of the mining metrics. The reason I got into Ordinals was really because I saw this is natural demand for block space, continued demand. We've seen bursts of demand for block space over time, meaning you look at Binance, they do their consolidations that take maybe a few days, and SAT per VByte goes up to 40 or 50, but it never has really sustained. Really, the last time there was a big glut of transaction fee was 2017, when we were all sending Bitcoin back and forth between shitcoin exchanges to buy all sorts of stuff.
And then some unnamed pools were mining empty blocks. It was a whole thing.
Yeah, that was true. That was around the that was also around the fork wars. So they were mining empty blocks, and the reason they were mining empty blocks is because it was actually a little more efficient, and they were maximizing the value of hash rate by basically excluding transactions, getting the header out faster to all of their miners. And then actually during that time, there was this other thing called
the block size war.
Well, ASIC boost. So they were doing covert ASIC boost, and if the fork went in, the SegWit fork went in, they would no longer be able to do ASIC boost. ASIC boost reduces the energy consumption of your miner by 20%. So you can do it covertly, which you used to be able to do before the SegWit fork. But then after that fork, you were able to, you could only do it overtly.
I feel like we got really into the weeds on mining really quick.
Good point, yeah.
Do we want to back up?
Back it down a little.
Here's the thing, and Nick and I live and breathe in this world for years, and now that we have an influx of fresh faces, a lot of whom come from a network that uses gas. We use fees on Bitcoin, but there's a lot of people who, with newfound BRC20 wealth, want to figure out where to put it, and they're asking me about how do I get into mining, or for whatever reason. Nick, do we want to do? What's your half a paragraph? What is Bitcoin mining pitch to a new person?
Even why they should do it?
No, just what even is it?
Right.
I don't want to assume that everybody even knows what it is. It's kind of arcane. It's kind of weird. If you've been trading NFTs for the past 2 or 3 years, maybe you've thought, oh, Bitcoin is this thing that uses energy. It's bad. Just don't think about it. But that's part of why we do inscriptions on Bitcoin now, to inherit its security benefits. So what is Bitcoin mining?
Okay. So Bitcoin mining is mathematically equivalent to guessing lottery numbers, and basically, if you were to attempt to win the lottery, the only way that you could increase your chances would be to guess more numbers more quickly than everybody else. So now imagine Charlie and I are guessing numbers from a lottery, and basically, if one of us hits the right number, we win the Bitcoin. So my way of outcompeting him is by adding more guesses, and that's equivalent to adding more miners. So if you have more miners, the chance of you winning the block is higher. Now, why do we do this work? Basically, what we're doing is we're demonstrating to the Bitcoin blockchain that we have some economic interest in the consensus, meaning the state of the chain at any point in time. So the reason that we do this, basically, we're not actually doing this for the Bitcoin. We're doing this to produce a consensus. The network rewards us with Bitcoin for doing that work, because that's That's like classical Nakamoto consensus is like having some demonstrable proof of work. And it has to be wasted work, actually. There's like reasons why it needs to be wasted, because you need to be demonstrating that you're
say
purely
spent.
motivated. What's that?
I say spent, not wasted.
Yeah, wasted, spent. You can't have other motivations. That's why, like, we can probably talk about MEV. MEV is a pretty interesting topic. That's where you're getting rewards outside of the standard protocol, and so that's where things start to get a little weird. It can start to break the consensus mechanism a little bit. But
That was like 5 paragraphs, but that's
okay.
good.
Hopefully it was good. I mean, we have 30 minutes, so.
We have 30 minutes that we have to fill, just like you filled a full block with a 4 megger. A lot of people here have seen the famous Taproot Wizard. That was this guy, and now that is us, who
That's us.
represent that kind of cool-ass deal flow. So what even is that? How did you do it?
Yeah, so a standard Bitcoin transaction can be up to 400 kilobytes. Anything less than that is good to go. You can just send that from your node. Obviously, it's very expensive, but you're good to go. There are transactions that can be greater than that, but less than 4 megabytes. And the reason that we can't do that typically is because there's something called the mempool policy. So if you run a node at home, there's probably somebody running a node in this building right now. If they received a transaction that was greater than 400 kilobytes, they would drop it on the floor, and it basically it's a DDoS vector, and so that's why they removed that ability. Well, we removed that bit of logic from the mempool at Luxor, so that way we can inject blocks that are, or transactions that are much bigger than that, up to 4 megabytes, which is actually the limit based on a bunch of different parameters of the consensus. And so yeah, when Udi approached us and was like, hey, we kind of want, we know you guys like to do interesting things with hash rate and do all sorts of fun stuff in the mining ecosystem. Do you think you could help us? Do you think you could put this big wizard into the mempool and get it mined? And of course, I jumped on that because I was like, this is something interesting. Like, nothing interesting in mining really ever happens.
It's been like pretty telegraphed for the past 2 years. Like, okay, well, we kind of resurrect the Chinese hash rate thing, but here in North America and other countries. But yeah, like, this is totally different. This is crazy for even Bitcoin miners who like. The crossover between like Bitcoin miner and NFT person is like just me and Nick, and maybe Beezy.
That's about it.
It's like
yep.
the 3 of us who are into this kind of thing. Yeah.
That are really into it. All the other, like, I'm obviously integrated with a lot of mining communities, and they're just like, this is great. We're making tons of money. Like, last week, we literally doubled the revenue that we would have had otherwise. Like, this is awesome. Like, I'm a super long BRC. I don't even know what BRC20s are, but like, they're super pumped on them. Super pumped on those, inscriptions, everything. If you can fill the blocks and make people want to pay for that, we're all for it.
Okay, so I'll try to rehash what you said about how, because I find that like sometimes you got to say how the big wizard was put into a Bitcoin block a few times for people to kind of like get it.
Go for it.
So so if you've been to mempool.space, you see what is a mempool, which is on a node, which is what that website runs. But every node that you run has its own mempool, which looks and sees all the transactions that are broadcast to it. And then for Bitcoin miners, when a pool like Luxor hits a block, one of the ASICs that points to our pool hits a block, we get the option of producing the next block. And so we basically look through our own node's mempool, select the optimal transactions, and include that into a block, which is then added to the Bitcoin blockchain. But historically, we've chosen, it's been pretty simple, the most profitable transactions to include go in first. It's pretty straightforward.
Yep.
Of course, there's a lot of complexity to it, but we can choose to put other transactions in, such as a big wizard with not a normal fee associated with it. So if we have a deal with somebody like Udi, or say Bitcoin Magazine for the Julian Assange, we actually brought a physical version.
Physical copy. We inscribed this as a 4 megger, which was pretty sweet. This will be the copy for this month, the Julian Assange issue, which I'm very excited about. I believe that they're going to do a bit of a collection based on this, which is going to be exciting as well. So there will be some Bitcoin Mag art coming your way.
Yeah, and so like that cool mechanic demonstrates just how. Let's say you want to do something bigger than just a big wizard, something even cooler. I don't know what it might be, but that's like the mechanic. You'd reach out to Nick or someone, and
Right.
and you got to work with a mining pool to then produce that block. And it opens up a lot of so a lot of the stuff that happens on Bitcoin, especially in Bitcoin mining, is like, well, can we do this? Why would we do this? Well, we don't know. And then we discover these mechanics, and then they become more sophisticated over time. And it feels really cool to like be a part of the first time that's really done.
Yeah, we were part of the first time. We've done a couple of other things. So we call these bespoke mints. Basically, they're mints that you couldn't do on your own, or inscriptions that you couldn't do on your own. Meaning, if you wanted to inscribe a bunch of art, most likely you can go download the Ord client and figure out how to do it, or most likely you can figure it out. It's actually not quite hard. But doing things that we call these like bespoke blocks, like the Big Wizard, or there was
The D-Gods.
the D-Gods mint was also especially cool. It wasn't actually, it was a full block, but the thing that made it interesting is that we ordered all of the D-Gods in order, and then also made sure that there were no other transactions or inscriptions within that block, so that way when it was mined, this was back when Ordinals.com was kind of like the prototype, and that was the only place that you could go to see all of the inscriptions. There was really no like collection mechanic yet, and so basically what it was super aesthetic to just see all D-Gods for like 4 or 5 pages.
And if you're a nerd like Cyfor, our OrdinalHub full stack engineer, he calls it the most beautiful block I've ever seen.
Yeah, it is. I mean, Cyfor really likes the visualization of mempool space, and if you go check out the D-Gods block, it actually is. It's very symmetrical. It looks like it was very handcrafted and curated, which it was. And I think that was one of the things that Frank, the D-Gods legend, he was the one that kind of came up with the idea, and it turned out really, really well. And I think it's one of those things where we're going to continue to see really interesting inscriptions coming out, different ways that people can be artistic. Like for example, actually the Bitcoin Mag big 4-megger was actually on an uncommon sat, which is somewhat interesting. And I think eventually there's going to be an epic or a rare and all sorts of interesting ways that that people can do this stuff. And it just shows how creative the NFT community is. And one of my favorite parts about Ordinals and what like this movement brings is a new culture to Bitcoin. And it changes the culture, and it brings real culture and art and innovation to what was, in my opinion, somewhat of a stagnating chain, at least culturally.
You talk about the art, and it's really interesting because this art is information, and you can put it into Bitcoin blocks. And I like to make this analogy, kind of like the painters of the Sistine Chapel. That is a beautiful piece of art that stands the test of time, and even hundreds of years later, we look up at it and we marvel at it, and we think, oh, what an incredible painter. But in order for that to happen, you have to have engineers build this chapel around it, and it's a collaboration between the analytical engineering mind with the artistic, to not say that these are separate colloquial sides of the brain, but like there's a really bright future of collaboration between nerds like Nick and I, and then artists like, God, I guess, is Udi an artist now? Then
No, Francisco's
he's
the
a
artist.
performance.
Francisco,
yeah. Farr is the artist. Yeah.
Alex Farr,
Don't let
an
me,
absolute
do
legend,
not
by
clip
the
me
way.
saying Udi's an artist.
The man is an absolute legend. He
Yeah.
just pumps out the most incredible art. It's an extremely talented artist,
Yeah.
which Bitcoin hasn't really had like that type of talent. They've had a lot of really good engineers. I've seen some engineers that I know in the audience, like they have some of the smartest brains working on deep cryptography and deep technological problems. But there are other talents out there, like artists and movement makers. Frank. I don't think Frank really does the art, but man, he does craft a movement.
He's a very focused visionary. I'm really impressed by his focus, even because that was a conversation that originated like a week or two into Inscription's really taking
very
off,
quickly,
which is crazy. So you mentioned uncommon, rare Satoshis. Some of us want to get our grubby hands on those. Those are very desirable. This is a kind of a rarity scheme that Casey proposed, which is intuitive, which is pretty cool. I think it's cool. And this gets into a really interesting mechanic. So where do rare and uncommon sats come from? They're with each new block or difficulty adjustment or kind of event in Bitcoin, these Satoshis pop out and are added to the Bitcoin blockchain. But this opens up a really interesting kind of collector gamified mechanic marketplace. I like to imagine block producers as like the deal flow and future production of uncommon Satoshis. So
So just so we're all on the same page, like of what an ordinal is. An ordinal is actually just a Satoshi. The inscription is the art that goes along with the ordinal. Ordinal theory states that every Satoshi can be individually numbered between 1 and 2.1 quadrillion, maybe 0. Raf Jeff, I don't know, he's looking at me weird. Could be between 0 or 1 to 2.1 quadrillion. But anyway, so they've all been individually numbered, and the idea is that the very first block, or very first Satoshi of every block is uncommon. The very first Satoshi of the difficulty adjustment is considered a rare. The very first Satoshi of a halving is considered an epic, and then there's the very first Satoshi ever is a mythic.
So there's only 3 epics, because we only had
There's
three.
only 3.
So there were one of our colleagues or associates in the business is going to produce an epic Satoshi here within a year or so.
In about 1 year, there's going to be another epic Satoshi, and I'm going to be on the hunt for that damn thing.
We're gonna everybody point your hash rate to Luxor so that we can get
track
that
it
epic.
down.
We can.
We'll fractionalize
the epic. And
Where
give it
should
to
we
them.
send it? That's a great question. Who should we give it to?
Burn
we
it to,
should
like, the
gift
Genesis
it to gift it to Beezy. Yeah, I think that thing could probably go for 8 figures.
Damn, I don't know. I mean, this is a great fun thing. What are these worth? Like Nullish right now, one of the great or OG sat hunters of our age, it just sold our age.
Our 4-month age.
Our 4-month. Well, that's an eternity in this business. He just sold an uncommon for like 0.4 Bitcoin. The auction today. I don't know if you saw that
Today? Oh, that was the ALS one, right?
That's about a.
Yeah.
I saw one tweet.
It was for Hal Finney. It was for Hal Finney, so it was a charity for Hal Finney, I believe. So, R.I.P.
Rock on, yeah. It creates this really interesting mechanic where we're all trying to. You can hunt Satoshis that already exist, or you can be in the business of producing them. What a hypothetical situation. Are we going to try to do you think there's going to be competition, MEV, reorg competition on that epic, that halving block?
So so it really depends on how this market forms. Obviously, there is not really a liquid market for uncommons right now. Nullish has sold 2, I believe. We sold 1, or I guess we kind of gave 1 to Bitcoin Mag. We obviously produce a lot of them, but we haven't really produced a liquid market yet. And so that's something we're working on. We are working on Sat Scanner. I believe it was supposed to go live today.
Tomorrow at noon.
Okay, tomorrow at noon. Sat Scanner, you basically go in and put your Bitcoin address in, and we are able to scan it and say, yes, you've got X number of rares or uncommons or whatever. And then the next step will be we'll produce a script that you can run to harvest them. Basically, put in your address, where you want them to go, and then they get pulled out of your regular transactions, so that way you don't accidentally send them or spend them somewhere.
Yeah, one of the issues that we're all here at Miami, we're not able to work on part 2 of this, but if you pay attention to the OrdinalHub socials this next week, we will shill it. You'll start seeing cool ways where you can search through your UTXO set to get those uncommons, or pizza sats, or Finney sats, or palindromes, or there's a number of ways we could classify this. This is, if you have a cool idea for categorizing Satoshis, hit me up, because I'd love to hear it. I think this is the most fascinating thing right now.
I think we have a question from the audience, which is exciting.
Concerned citizen here, it just made me think, are you concerned that potentially the pursuit of the epic sat could lead to a 51% attack on Bitcoin via mining pool consolidation?
I don't think so. It would be very interesting, but if that is all it took to 51% attack Bitcoin, I would say that Bitcoin is already broken. So I would say that no, most likely not. And I would say that, unless the thing was worth, I don't know, what if a market develops and it's worth $10 billion, maybe. But I don't think that that's going to happen, most likely, though I would like it to, because that means my uncommons are worth a ton as well. But no, I don't think that it will, but it is a really interesting point, which gets into some of the MEV stuff where I think we could see, MEV start to have
What does MEV stand for? It has 2 definitions.
Minor extracted value.
Or maximum extract. It's kind of whichever, I don't know.
I think it technically is maximum extractable value, but we just call it minor extracted value because the miners are the only ones that can actually extract that value.
That is, the broad definition is ways for miners to make more money beyond just simple, standard boilerplate ordering of transactions as they
You're getting money. You're basically getting extra reward for the way that you order the transactions within the block. In ETH, it's very important, obviously, that they went so far as to developed Flashbots, which was like a searching thing for basically people to inject their transactions and reduce the the value extracted by the miner. Really, the idea and the reason for that is because before Flashbots, what we saw in ETH was that mining pools were realizing we can sandwich attack all of these these DeFi swaps. So, like for example, if you saw a big swap, you could remove liquidity, let the swap occur, take on the ARB, and then add the liquidity back all atomically.
And in layman's terms, if you're trying to use Unisat, or not Unisat, shoot, Uniswap, and you're trying to swap shitcoin A for shitcoin B, and you're like, why are the spreads so big? It's because you probably got sandwich attack or something.
Yeah, exactly. You got sandwich attack. There's
the money that you just lost went to some backdoor.
There's
deal.
like flash loans. There's all sorts of different things that you can do with MEV, and I think that we're going to start to see that with BRC20. Just recently heard that that there is a pool out there that's doing that with Stacks transactions. They're basically censoring some of the transactions that Stacks needs. I don't know if they're censoring them or if they're moving them around in the block, but they're basically extracting extra value from Stacks because they're able to do that.
BRC20 is really interesting because yes, it's mania. I personally don't think the standard is very compelling, but regardless,
Right.
It drives a lot of fees for miners, and what we've seen is it demonstrates a really interesting mechanic that you talked about, which I think is worth kind of teasing out because this is really interesting. The MEV on Bitcoin, because the way that BRC20 transactions currently work are, shout out Domo. It's kind of more like a messaging protocol. So the actual inscription of BRC20 balances don't happen. They're transfer functions, they're deploy and mint functions. And so the ordering of those matters. So if if someone creates a token of supply, say 21 million, and all but 1,000 are left to mint, and you and another person broadcast your transactions to mint that last 1,000, let's say you have the same fee, but you actually call your buddy up, you call Nick up and you say, hey Nick, I know you got the next block, can you put my transaction in first?
Right.
And I'll give you like 1 extra Satoshi for doing that. That's MEV, where now you have achieved kind of an outside ancillary benefit or goal by allowing your transaction to be first. So we saw this, we've kind of seen little glimpses of this the past few weeks.
Yeah, certainly, and I think that it's going to continue to grow, especially because of the proliferation of MEV on ETH. Basically, yeah, like you said, you can just order the transactions differently and extract that value yourself. You can also do things like, since none of this is encrypted, you could basically modify people's deploys, all sorts of things that you can do with mempool monitoring. But yeah. I know we only have 2 minutes. Do you want to ask? Try to get some questions, maybe?
On that subject, it's complicated and it brings a lot of cool new things, a lot of scary things,
Right.
and I'm confident Bitcoin will survive and grow healthily. That's the TLDR of my opinion.
TLDR, yep.
A question,
Do we have any questions?
Diego.
Do you think hardware adoption is critical for the end user, regular person, being able to plug and play? Is that part of longer vision?
Hardware mining or hardware wallets?
Hardware mining.
I don't think. I think unfortunately, I think we're past any meaningful amount of hash rate coming from hobbyist miners. I would say now it's probably in the low single digits percentage of hash rate is coming from folks that have less than 5 machines. So I think plug and play is kind of, at this point, it's more of a hobby. There may be some ulterior motive that you would want to do that sort of activity, basically KYC-free sats or contributing to the network or using some extra heat, producing some extra heat to I use an S9 to heat my office in the winter. You just basically turn the fan down to 5%, and it just sits there and idles, produces 400 or 500 watts, which is great, but and a few sats here and there. But otherwise, that type of activity at home is most likely not going to happen. There's if you haven't been to a mining facility, they're huge. They're as big as this hotel, and they produce tons and tons of heat and sound and noise, which you can't really do at home.
I'll make a short case for home mining. It's not going to be a huge part of the network, probably, but there are extra benefits to it. You learn a lot about how Bitcoin mining works. You get to tinker, you get to custom, and you get to own it yourself, because a lot of people say not your hash, not your... I'm not even sure what the phrase is, but you know what it is. I think you don't go and you just deploy 10,000 ASICs. You go and you deploy 1 and 2, and then you scale that to 100. And then you go deploy 10,000 once you hate your life and you want to like have a never-ending side hobby.
Yeah, and mining is super fun. So you can, if you're like, if that can be a perfect, like ordinals are fun. That could be a perfectly reasonable reason to do home mining. It's super fun. What do you
Last
got?
question.
Yeah, you totally mine at home for those reasons. But also, question, you mentioned SAT scanner. As a privacy-conscious individual, if I provide you my addresses, you now know all my addresses. Is there something on the roadmap for people who have their own indexes that can plug in and get that information out without me having to tell you anything?
We want to allow people to do it. Right now, we're going to build a tool that allows anyone.
Yeah.
It's the standard of privacy assumptions with Bitcoin apply for this. If you give people your address, they're going to know it. It's the same way we're a private company, we want to provide a cool service, and we hope to encourage individuals to do privacy-conscious things in the future.
If
You can paste your outputs into Ordinals.com and check to see if you have any uncommons.
you can do that too.
Does
Yep,
that run server-side or client-side?
server side.
Yeah, we just
Yeah.
make it way easier.
So what
for
I would do,
people.
like in your case, if you are privacy conscious, what I would do is I would do the SAT index. I mean, it'll take you like a week, but do that, and then you can list all of the uncommons, rares, whatever you have in any of your. Basically, you put in your output, and it'll give you all of that. We wanted to add the extensibility of doing addresses because, like for example, like my mining address at home, I get paid one time every day, and been getting paid for 365 days and never moved. So I have 365 UTXOs. It'd be great to just like put in the address and be like, oh yeah, you got a couple in these different UTXOs. Yeah, give it a try. It should be fun.
Although they're all green, I don't see any blues.
Beezy, what do you got?
I was gonna ask, so I absolutely love the idea of ripping 4 megas. I think it's awesome. I think what's super cool about it is it turns Bitcoin block space into a giant billboard, effectively. But in order to do that, you kind of have to do an out-of-band transaction, right? So,
Not anymore. We don't do it that way anymore.
oh, you don't? Okay. So that kind of, I was gonna ask if the number of out-of-band transactions increases as a result of wanting to do more exotic things with block space, would that distort sort of the mempool fee policy that a lot of people rely on?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, so there's a couple of attack vectors here. If you wanted to do that, you could basically set the fee to 0, mine the block, take the payment out of band from the customer, and then what you're doing is perturbing the FPPS rate. The FPPS rate is the rate that all mining pools are paying across basically the network. You could perturb it downward, but you're still making extra revenue. So you would effectively be able to bankrupt FPPS pools by doing this. I don't want to do, as a small mining pool, it wouldn't really affect us and the ones that are doing ordinals. I'm not too worried about it, but it is definitely an attack vector if we start putting in zero fee big blocks and get paid out of band. So there's definitely that, but we don't do that anymore. We did the one time for the wizard mostly to be provocative and do something weird that other people haven't done before. But now what we do is we basically charge some premium over what this prevailing rate is. Not a lot of 4 megas going in when the prevailing rate is 150 sats per VByte, because we'd probably be charging somewhere around 4 to 450, which is not very attractive, especially when you're mining an entire block. It would be probably like 6 or 8 Bitcoin to do that. So.
Bitcoin mining and Bitcoin pool operation is a race to 0. So on a long timeline, this dynamic fee market, whether it happens on band or out of band, should eventually coalesce into a robust security policy.
Yeah, agreed. Well,
Do you think the future of mining is more centralized than decentralized? Are you excited about any hardware that might hit the market that could make it more decentralized?
so the question was, is there any hardware coming to market that might help decentralize the mining, basically the mining ecosystem? Really,
Those are massive, what, 30%?
So Foundry is 35-ish%, and they're the biggest, but then it's a very long tail from there. There's several pools that are 2 to 3%. The rest of the pools, it does definitely tail down. But I would say that most likely the reason we won't see too much centralization is because of the scarcity of energy. Energy is generally evenly distributed around the world because the sun more or less hits all of the, all the energy that we've absorbed comes from the sun. And so that energy is generally distributed around the world in one shape or form or another, either through sun or wind or, trapped in the earth as fossil fuels or gravity. There's all different ways that you can harness energy. And I think that energy is pretty much prolific around the world. And so that means that really you just need to be tapping in. Right now we're seeing a huge influx of miners going into the Mideast, where they have a very big methane problem, where they want to be able to capture that methane. And so that's like a big story right now in mining is how can we cap that methane and use it to mine Bitcoin with. Also seeing a big influx back into the Scandinavian areas, and then Russia, which is kind of the elephant in the room. Russia is probably the biggest purchaser of mining machines right now.
We saw this happen like a decade ago, like with Ghash or whatever. And so, and these problems, they're embedded into Bitcoin's game theory. We've seen this happen. Bitcoin has survived. There are numerous like events in the future which spur on further decentralization. And part of it is just us knowing these are challenges and fighting to preserve Bitcoin's ethos.
Awesome. Cool. Thank you guys very much. I appreciate it.